So the Mike White mania. Here's my theory on this. I was thinking about this because I had two men related to me over, in their
Mhm.
late 50s, 60s, um, who I spoke to over the weekend. One is a Jets fan, one's a Patriots fan, who love Mike White more than anything in the world. Like, I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but there's like, how about that Mike White? Like, and I tried to say, well, this is my perspective on the fact that they didn't really necessarily do the right thing in the development of Zach Wilson. And so sort of a short-term fix. And they was like, no, 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 no. It's like total punk, like total loser. And this was just shared among these two older like people in my life. And I only say they're older just because I feel like there is this Jets fan that is like, I want a hard worker, I want a lunch pail guy, I want somebody who's gonna grind it out, who isn't like a snot-nosed punk. And by the way, I'm not talking about Sam with the Patriots fans here. Like this was just family members. Like I want lunch pail guy who's gonna grind it out, like somebody who works hard and fifth round pick, like he's the man. And I think that there's a generational divide to a degree in like the kind of player and what some fans are looking for. And that's why, you'll just hear in talk radio here in New York, it's Mike White mania. It doesn't really matter that he threw a pretty bad interception to start the game against the Vikings.
Which is the problem with him is that there's no ceiling for him.
But that's what I mean, and that's what we ended up zeroing in on is like, okay.
So then what's next?
So I'm sure I know like Bobby and Massapequa is like loving Mike White and telling all his kids you gotta like Mike White and this is why Odell Beckham Jr. is a diva. But what is the plan for developing Mike White?
Well, I think that's the thing is like on one hand, I was impressed by their ability to even like they were down down hard bad in the first half and were able to get in within 5 points and Mike White rushed a little QB keeper at the 1 yard line into the end zone. But like you said, there were bad picks, there were missed opportunities, and I honestly put a little bit of this on the offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur as well. That some of these play calls to me were baffling at the end of the game. It was a first and goal, and they had 4 plays to get 1 yard, and they couldn't do it because they were going out of the shotgun and taking throwing passes into the end zone to guys like Braxton Berrios who couldn't catch the ball yesterday. When you have James Robinson right there to just maybe see if he can punch one into the end zone for like I was saying 1 yard.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's a simultaneous lack of confidence in people who I think are can actually contribute in situations like that, and putting a lot into the hands of the backup, into the hands of Mike White to make something out of nothing, basically.
He's not the backup; he's the savior.
Right.
Well, I mean, but just like that. But look, the defense plays great. I mean, they really clamped down after
25 points, and it's hard. It's obviously hard to contain Justin Jefferson, of course, and it's just I at this point now with the loss, and even though it was a close one, it's just to me I'm still wondering. I just now am really curious, like what is the plan, not just for next week, but for next season?
This is what I'm saying. I mean, I feel like that's what I'm frustrated about this Mike White conversation. It's just, fan bases
It's a Band-Aid.
He's a Band-Aid, but fan bases are always going to be this way, where they want. Again, I was just saying this about the Giants. People were saying fire Mike Kafka on Twitter. I saw that, and I know it's just random people, but I feel like those are the people that the Jets are listening to. And I know that Zach Wilson has not played well. I understand that. I know he's been a punk. You handle that internally. You sit down with Garrett Wilson. You sit down with Elijah Moore and say, stop talking about this in the media. We're a team. We handled this with each other. And Zach, like,
my primary concern is that none of these people either A, like him, B, support him, or C, like really care about his well-being, or D, all of the above. because
that's true. I mean, I get it.
Because my thinking is just, if this was potentially another quarterback or another team, I just don't think you'd be seeing this level of public discord without some sort of acknowledgement that it's not really okay for this to happen on the team.
I know he's friends with little white boy Braxton Berrios, and I know that during training camp they were all wearing like T-shirts about how he was having like sex with older women and getting all into that as well. I mean, so like it's not beyond repair.
But even this past week, like they're all wearing Mike White shirts to the game.
But they did that before with Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is like, is there like a shift? Like, is there like are they making a point? Like, I just like I'm just concerned that like this level of out in the open like discontent is like lingering, and
that's on Saga. That is on Saga. This is what's annoyed me.
It's on the leaders, right? Like,
why is Saga letting guys go, knowing what the number one story is in the entire NFL? Why is Saga letting guys go out there with like Mike White T-shirts? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. He has lost control of the way that players are conducting themselves with the media, and they're all over social media doing whatever the hell that they want. I know I sound like an old fogey, but this is important in a New York context because you can't let the media run the narrative. It doesn't happen with the Giants. It always happens with the Jets.
Right, but it also doesn't happen for other teams.
Yeah.
And when it does happen for other teams, it's usually dysfunctional teams.
And this market for media is way different than anywhere else. The only comparable place is New England, where like there's this kind of attention on sports teams,
right,
in Boston. Yeah. But
and they don't want any of that. They wouldn't want any of that stuff getting out about. That's why there was such a commotion about, you know, fans wanting Bailey Zappi in there, because it was kind of like why are we so quick to give up on Mac Jones? He's had a few bad games, and you want to put your 6th-round rookie in, like. But
no one is going out wearing Zappi shirts.
That's the thing,
in New England.
There was a slight clamoring, and it's not a story anymore.
Right.
This is still something to be. This is still a topic of conversation. It's none of this continuing, or none of this not being resolved is just good for the disposition of the team going forward.
And it's not even to blame Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. They're in their 20s. They're into social media and showing off. Like,
their first
I get
rounders,
it.
They're first rounders. They want
Elijah Moore's not first rounder.
Oh, sorry, he's the second round. But I mean,
yeah.
they're like high draft picks. They want to be involved in their offense. They want to be number one targets. Like, I understand, but I also see what you're saying in the sense of that type of stuff can be more of a self-inflicted wound than just expressing yourself.
Yes, it is. It's gotten out of control. I think they've been really drinking the Kool-Aid from the New York media, and Salah just seems very out of his depth in terms of PR. And part of it might be Woody Johnson and that team like skimping financially on a PR team, because that's the like hidden secret of these NFL teams is, yes, there's a salary cap. You can only spend X amount on players, but you know, the Bengals have a really shitty like training facility compared to New England or the Giants or whatever. There are teams that decide to invest in their team, and that includes public relations. And in the New York media market, that needs to be locked up. And the Jets have never been like that. And it's the worst I've ever seen with this situation. Even though they are winning, it's just I think it's going to collapse the way that they're like letting everybody talk, and there's the team is being undercut by this stuff.
But compare. I know it's obviously a much smaller media market, but speaking of the Bengals, Joe Burrow was going out there every week last year and getting demolished because of how poorly his offensive line was playing, and he was with not very inspired play calling. They still made it to the Super Bowl, but there was no like, I'm annoyed with Zach Taylor, like I'm bothered by the play calling. There was no like, I'm getting my ass kicked every week. Like he wasn't.
Daniel Jones in the New York market never blamed his offensive line. It's been the worst in football until this year for years.
Like there are examples where like I think there are like legitimate gripes to be had where players are not as expressive about it, and it's not become a story. And like I was saying last week or the week before, perception is reality. If this is what's being conveyed and what's being reported and what people are seeing, whether it gets squashed, whether it perpetuates or not, that becomes the story.
Yeah.
It just becomes reality. It
Mm-hmm.
just becomes what people, it becomes an associative thing. You think of the Jets, you think of this controversy. And that's just not good for a team who's trying to be a competitive playoff team. It's what happens to a team like the Raiders or a team like the Broncos who are trying to be more competitive this season and are not playing as well. Whereas
Here,
the Jets are, they're 7-5, they're still in the hunt, they're still comfortably in the 7th seed, but this shouldn't be dogging them. This shouldn't be a problem, and it
yeah.
still is. I still think it very much is, regardless of whether White continues to play well or not.
It's a festering wound.
Yes,
He might
that's
play
the
well,
thing. Absolutely.
but Zach Wilson would have been played well against the Chicago Bears, and I mean, at least serviceably. I'm convinced of that. And this, like, so Emma's bookie writes in, Saleh would have lost the locker room defense if he kept playing Zach Wilson. They're supposed to sacrifice their first potential playoff appearance in a decade for the sake of continuity. I think organizations that are smarter do try to develop their high investments in in players.
Well, or you actually try and mediate if there's a
Mediate.
if there's a problem, like if there's actually an issue, like
You mediate.
I mean,
You keep it in house.
let's be honest. I mean, Draymond Green punched one of his teammates in the face, and they're still trying to like work things out and like, play together. Like it's these things happen.
But
like,
speaking of it, that's another Jets controversy that got way out of proportion because
the
they
Geno
don't
Smith thing?
deal with the New York media. Yes.
yeah, of course, absolutely.
Another locker room dispute that was litigated in public because Geno's jaw got broke over a gambling argument.
When you think about the Jets, this is the stuff you think about. Like you think about Geno Smith getting punched over $400. You think about the butt fumble. Like you think about like annoying and kind of embarrassing things. And like that's like you said, it's a public relations problem and it's a perception problem.
And also, I'll just bring up to the Bills. Like I mean, I'm not comparing Zach Wilson to Josh Allen, but most people, especially PFF people, talk about how terrible Josh Allen's first 2 seasons were. Oh, he's awful. He's awful. He can't hit the broadside of a barn. He's so inaccurate. Year 3, look what happens. There is value in continuity, especially if you're investing in picks.
And he wasn't like, sure, he did not perform that well as a rookie. Neither did Mahomes. Mahomes barely played as a rookie. You know, sure, he didn't play as well second season around, but again, was Stephon Diggs, or like, I mean, even so, I think I'm trying to even remember when Diggs joined the team, but anybody on that team, were they being like, this guy sucks, like this guy, like we want Tyrod Taylor to start, or like we want Case Keenum, like, you know, this, I'm not even sure if I'm getting all the continuity of who was on the team at the
No, Diggs came later,
but I'm saying, I guess just, I mean, when he was still finding his rhythm, now he's literally one of, if not the best quarterback in the league. What if they had just, everyone there had just lost patience, be like, we need to win now, and kind of ruined his confidence?
And I don't think Zach Wilson will ever be anywhere close.
No, I agree.
But
it's more just like, I think it's
this
more
is
the
a process argument.
The broad contours of, do you continue to try even though results have been diminishing or not super satisfactory, but this person is your second overall pick, and do you try to keep him not only happy but also make it so that it's a priority that the team coalesces around each other and around him? And I don't think that's really a priority.
Right. And I'm just trying to see his second year. The Buffalo Bills finished second in the AFC East. So they were in a very similar position to the Jets at this point, meaning they were still they lost in the playoffs. They lost to the Houston Texans in the wild card round. But they, just because they were in the playoff hunt, that didn't mean that they gave up on their year 2 quarterback.
Right.
I mean, that's all I can say about it.
It's always it's more. It would be one thing if they like cut Zach Wilson or like traded Zach Wilson. It'd be one thing if they traded for a vet or signed a vet or something. This is almost worse because this is purgatory.
Yeah.
There's no long-term understanding here.
All while the whole world is pointing at him and mocking him.
And all while the team is good. Like this is also the problem. This is also always the problem with a team like the Jets or the Mets is these types of controversies or these types of issues shouldn't be dogging a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Like when this also happens with the Mets, you know, when they were losing, they had a bad streak, and frickin' Francisco Lindor was like or Javi Baez when he was still on the Mets was like booing the fans.
Yeah, right.
And it's like the team is good. Like don't just like you guys are idiots. Like why are we not focusing on the team performing well and focusing on a player literally booing his fans? It's like only these types of organizations can make success feel bad.
Yep.